By the end of 57 BC, the home of Publius Clodius dominated Palatine Hill. Like a hotelier, Clodius and Fulvia filled their rooms with people who wanted the prestige of a Palatine Hill address, but without the finances required to purchase such pricey real estate. His sister, Clodia Quinta, who had been divorced by Lucullus, lived on the premises along with his other sister, Clodia Quadrantaria, the widow of the Metellus Creticus who had conquered the island of Crete during Rome's war against the pirates. Among his other residents, a young man named Marcus Caelius Rufus enjoyed the lavish pleasures of Palatine living, along with the physical delights offered by the 36-year-old Clodia Quadrantaria. Caelius Rufus was a few years younger than Publius Clodius. He was the son of an equite from the deep Pompeian territory of Picenum, and was distantly related to the Quintus Pompeius Rufus who, as Sulla's co-consul in 88 BC, had been murdered by the troops of Pompeius Strabo. His father, who was likely a banker, had arranged for his son to serve apprenticeships, first under Cicero, and then under Crassus. It was during the time that Caelius lived in the home of Cicero that Clodius made his acquaintance, enticing the young Pasentine to roam the streets at night with Clodius's entourage of young nobles. Despite his relationship to Cicero, when Lucius Sergius Catilina attempted to run against Cicero for the 63 BC consulship, Caelius supported Catilina. If Caelius was involved in Catilina's attempt to overthrow the government, then he was protected from prosecution by Crassus, in whose home he resided at the time of the Catilina conspiracy. Crassus, whose involvement with Catilina was questioned by at least one senator, may even have been responsible for Caelius leaving Rome, to serve under the governor of Africa, immediately following the tumultuous events of 63 BC. After returning to Rome in 60 BC, Caelius followed the path typical for most young men by serving in the law courts, creating the perfect opportunity for Clodius. By 59 BC, Clodius was working on a plan to run for tribune of the plebs, and orchestrate Cicero's exile from Rome. In a move to indirectly attack Cicero, Clodius likely persuaded Caelius to take a specific case within the extortion court. The people of Macedonia had sent a delegation to press charges against the proconsul, Gaius Antonius Hybrida, for corruption. We are told that both Caesar and Crassus prosecuted Hybrida, and that Marcus Caelius Rufus had tried Hybrida for his connection to the Catilina conspiracy 5 years earlier. Gaius Antonius Hybrida was Cicero's colleague in the consulship for his 63 BC year. Hybrida had originally run on a joint ticket with Catilina, but Catilina lost the election. So that Hybrida would not interfere with Cicero's legislative agenda, Cicero offered to trade his highly lucrative provincial posting in Macedonia for Hybrida's disappearing quietly into the background during the entirety of their consulships. Hybrida happily accepted the offer, and then proceeded to plunder the province of Macedonia to his heart's desire. So conspicuous were Hybrida's crimes against Macedonia, that the Senate was forced to recall him, and Hybrida was replaced by Gaius Octavius, the husband of one of Caesar's nieces. Rumors also circulated that Hybrida's plundering of Macedonia enriched Cicero equally, although no proof was ever produced that Cicero received any monies from Hybrida. The trial, however, was a sign that Cicero was acquiring an unfavorable image. Knowing he was the intended target, and outraged by political opponents attempting to use the courts against him, Cicero chose to defend Hybrida. Unfortunately, he failed to secure an acquittal, and Hybrida was exiled to Cephallenia. Being a member of the team that defeated Cicero, however, was very advantageous for the young Marcus Caelius Rufus. His instant fame brought him enough wealth to take up residence in Publius Clodius's palatial villa. It was around this time, in April or May of 59 BC, that Caelius began an affair with Clodia Quadrantaria, the woman possibly written of in the poems of Catullus as his tawdry, passionate, angry, and sometimes tender lover, Lesbia. The affair between Clodia and Caelius lasted until sometime near the end of 57 BC. For reasons we are not told, Caelius ended the relationship. Whether over her indifference to Caelius's desire for a long-term monogamous relationship, or, like Catullus's Lesbia, her unwillingness to dismiss her other lovers, in ending his relationship with Clodia, Caelius also ended his friendship with Clodius, and he left Palatine Hill. Before long, Marcus Caelius Rufus found himself charged with public violence, attempted poisoning, and murder. He was linked to the disappearances of the delegation of Egyptian envoys who had journeyed to Rome to petition the Senate to uphold the reign of Berenike over that of Ptolemy Auletes. Despite Ptolemy Auletes' effort to stop the entire delegations reaching Rome, one man successfully arrived. A philosopher named Dio of Alexandria, who stayed in the home of a Roman senator, was mysteriously poisoned to death early in 56 BC. To link the death to Caelius, Clodia Quadrantarius alleged that Caelius had attempted to poison her as well. After the prosecution made its case, Caelius spoke first in his own defense. Marcus Licinius Crassus then defended all of the legal charges against Caelius. Cicero was the last of the defense advocates to speak. And even though Cicero's speech to the court confirmed that, indeed, Caelius had participated in both the intimidation and attempted bribery of the traveling Egyptian nobles, Cicero knew that the charge of murder rested primarily on Clodia's testimony. And so, instead of defending Caelius's actions, Cicero attacked the character of Clodia Quadrantarius. By comparing her to a common prostitute, and even alluding that she, like her younger sister, had also engaged in incestuous behavior with her brother, Clodius, Cicero fully discredited the character of Clodia by presenting her as a vindictive witness whose real motive was the punishment of the lover who spurned her. Having won the case for Marcus Caelius Rufus, Cicero's pro-Caelio speech, embodying his personal oratorical style, remains one of history's best examples of Roman oratory. And though Cicero had assailed the character of Clodius as part of his indictment of Clodia, Clodius had little time to retaliate. In the chaos of the early 56 BC year, with the murder of Dio of Alexandria, the trial of Marcus Caelius Rufus, the competition between Crassus and Pompeius over command of an army with which to enter Egypt, violence in the streets, his own prosecution by Titus Annius Milo, and his subsequent prosecution of Titus Annius Milo in reprisal, Clodius had been given a new task. With Cato back in Rome, the arch-conservatives were rallying, and they were ready to put an end to the madness. Lucius Domitius Aenobarbus, who was married to Cato's sister, Porcia, announced he would run for the 55 BC consulship. With the support of Cato, Bibulus, who was married to Cato's daughter, and the rest of the conservative Senate, Aenobarbus ran on promises of ending Caesar's illegal war in Gaul. Once elected as consul, Aenobarbus promised to call Caesar back to Rome, where he would stand trial, not only for the crime of unsanctioned war, but for the bevy of illegal legislation he had passed during his 59 BC consulship. If Caesar was recalled to Rome, he would lose his imperium. Without imperium, he would be a private citizen, subject to prosecution. And if Caesar went down, it was somewhat probable that Pompeius and Crassus would go down with him. In an attempt to avoid being stripped of his command, and prosecuted, Caesar directed Clodius to increase the violence in the streets so as to disrupt any attempt to hold senatorial elections. Caesar had a plan, but he needed time to enact it. By pushing the elections as far into the 56 BC year as possible, Clodius was expected to buy Caesar that time.